Hi, Andy XL back with another NFXL podcast, and this is my regular weekly feature, Good Week, Bad Week, where I look back at the previous week's action. So the question is, who's going to be grinning or grimacing following week 12 in the NFL? And as we head into the final third of the regular season, who has reasons to be optimistic or indeed pessimistic? So let's start with the good week teams. And first of all, the Los Angeles Rams. Now, when you have a veteran quarterback who is arguably in the form of his life, a talented receiver core, and a defense that is getting better and better and better from already being pretty good to start with, you have plenty of reasons to smile. And when you absolutely demolish another possible contending team and see your rival for top seeding in the NFC lose in the same weeks, that makes the Rams a very happy bunch after week 12. The Rams are now the team with a target on their back as the rightful favourites to win it all this season. But there are 31 other teams that would love to be where the Rams are right now. So it was a great week for the Rams. It was also a very good week for the Houston Texans. No CJ Stroud, no problem. Davis Mills first mounted a fourth quarter comeback win over the Jags, then led the offense in overcoming the Titans and now more impressively the Bills. But it is their elite defense that is the real reason they have kept their season alive while Stroud has been out. And after beating the Bills, they now sit in a group of six teams within one win of each other, and with which three of those six finish the season strongest will continue to play beyond week 18. At the Colts and then at the Chiefs are the next tough test for the Texans, but a win over the Colts would remarkably pull them within a win of the division lead in the AFC South. And the game against the Chiefs is a game against a wild card rival too. So the next two games are huge for the Texans' postseason hopes. After that, they would have the Cardinals and Raiders. So one win from the next two will get them well in the race for the postseason following this excellent Week 12 win. Right. It was yet another good week, and 9 in a row now for the New England Patriots. They were some way from being their best in beating the Bengals in Week 12, but they got the job done to surely secure postseason football. That in itself would make this a great week for the Patriots following their 10th win of the season, considering their toils post Brady. But add in the loss for the Bills and a couple more wins could be enough to secure the AFC East title too. So in terms of where they sit right now, this was about as good a week as the Patriots could hope for. However, the win was soured by the injury to Will Campbell, with the offensive line already looking like the Patriots' Achilles heel. Losing Campbell could be seriously bad news for their prospects going forward. And obviously, it was a good week for the Kansas City Chiefs. Perspective is everything when looking at the Chiefs' comeback win over the Colts in week 12. With them trailing by 11 points going into the final quarter, it was easy to perceive their season's hopes as about to be dealt a potentially fatal blow. But then Patrick Mahomes did decided to say, not so quick, my friends. And his friends on the defense chipped in too. As a result, the perception is of a team on a high and right back on track. And that may not be far from the truth. However, they remain a game out of the wildcard spots and 10th in the AFC standings. So it is far from a given this team will even make the postseason, yet alone go deep into it. They certainly needed to keep the pedal to the metal in the next 3 weeks as they go to Dallas before hosting wildcard rivals in the Texans and Chargers. Win two of those three, and they will indeed be on course for the postseason. Anything less could see them fall short of that goal, though. But a loss in week 12 would surely have meant they needed to win all three of their upcoming games, so the Chiefs can perceive that they have had a very good week 12. Right, and in a similar situation, the Dallas Cowboys. They had a great week due to a great comeback win over the Eagles. As a standalone win, this represents a standout week for Dallas. And it presents huge hope for the future as this team now looks really good on offense and more than decent on defense. For this season, though, it looks to be too late to make a difference. So it may be next season that the Cowboys are ones to watch rather than this. But they're so entertaining. They are a great watch anyway. Win or lose, needing 5 wins from their last 6 to make the postseason. Upcoming games against the Chiefs and Lions are obstacles they need to overcome before the Vikings, Chargers, Commanders, and Giants finish off their regular season schedule. On the evidence of this win, they are certainly capable of getting those 5 wins, but the next two are probably their toughest remaining assignments. And guess what? It was another good week for the Chicago Bears. Another narrow win in week 12. The Bears have won 4 in a row now by 5, 4, 2, and 3 points respectively, winning all the close ones. And now the Bears are probably 2 wins away from making the postseason. They remain top of the NFC North and are tied for second in the NFC standings. Now, who saw that coming? And Caleb Williams and the offense continue to find a way to do enough to get wins in the fourth quarter, which is a great habit to have. Can they keep that going at Philadelphia and then at Green Bay, though? Well, that will be the test for them in the next couple of weeks before they host the Browns, then at home to Green Bay, at San Fran, and at home to the Lions to round out their regular season. Tough games ahead then as they seek to find those 2 wins that they need to secure postseason football and maybe even a divisional title. And it was a good week again. Another team on a winning run, the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens' own performance in beating the Jets was certainly nothing to write home about, but it and the loss for the Steelers puts the Ravens back on top in the AFC North. And the next 3 weeks give them a chance to take a firm grip on that division as they play the Bengals twice and the Steelers in between those games. It's the defense that is getting the job done for the Ravens right now, but at some point the offense needs to do more than just enough for them to win this division and then to threaten the better teams come the playoffs. Moving on, it was a good week for the San Francisco 49ers. Christian McCaffrey did it again for the 49ers in week 12 as he, with some help from the defense, carried them to a win that has big wildcard significance over the Panthers in week 12. With the 49ers' next 2 games being against the Browns and Titans either side of their bye, they could well be 10-4 after week 5. And with 3 NFC North teams, the Bears, Packers, and Lions, having 4 games between themselves yet to come, and thus taking wins off each other, that may be enough to secure postseason football for the 49ers. And the team that keeps defying my expectations in a positive way for them, not for me, is the Jacksonville Jaguars. I simply just can't get a handle on this team. But the Jags needed overtime to beat the Cardinals and overcome 3 picks and a fumble from Trevor Lawrence. This win keeps them in a wildcard spot and pulls them in a game with the AFC South leading Colts, which makes it a fine week for them. But they need to win because of Lawrence rather than in spite of him if they are to catch the Colts. But they do have eminently winnable games coming up against the Titans and Jets in the next 3, with the Colts in between, which is the huge one. If they could extend their current 2-week run to a 5-game win streak, they could take control of the AFC South. They also get the Titans in week 18, so beat the Titans twice and the Jets once, and they will almost certainly make the postseason. So this win over the Cardinals was a big step in that direction and makes it a really good week for the Jags. The Green Bay Packers also had a good week. It was not the prettiest win over the Vikings in week 12, but it is a win that keeps the Packers right on the heels of the Bears in the NFC South and in current possession of a wild card from the NFC. The defense was really good again, but the offense continues to be more functional and good. Admittedly, it was without Josh Jacobs and Matthew Golden, plus obviously they've been without Jaden Reed long term, but he's on his way back. So there are excuses, but they weren't good, the offense. At the Lions and at home to the Bears make it a pivotal fortnight ahead for the Packers' divisional title hopes. Win both and they will take control in that regard. Lose both and those hopes will have gone, and they will also be playing catch up in the wild card race. Time for the offense to step up to help the defense then if they have to get the wins they need in those games. And staying in the NFC North, the Detroit Lions had a good week. Although, having said that, talk about dodging a bullet, or more like a Gatling gun of them from Jameis Winston, throwing for fun and the big play against the big friendly Lions secondary. Good job they were able to wheel out their own big gun in Jahmyr Gibbs to ultimately blast the Lions as the Giants asunder in overtime. This was a must-win game for the Lions. Losing it would have been a devastating blow. Winning it keeps them firmly in the NFC North and wildcard pictures, but this performance was hardly that of a serious contender come the postseason, should they get that far. They now host the Packers and Cowboys in the next 2 weeks, before travelling to face the Rams. 3 tough games, and the Lions may need to win 2 of them if they are to make the postseason. A Thanksgiving loss to the Packers would probably end their NFC North title hopes, as they would then trail Green Bay by a game and a half and have lost the head-to-head tiebreak with them too. Right, quick drink. The Seattle Seahawks did enough to beat the Titans and stay in a clear lead in the NFC wildcard race. 2 more wins will probably get them across the line in that race now, referring back to the NFC North playing each other plenty. Comments for you 49ers. Can they get those wins against the Vikings and Falcons in the next 2 weeks? Possible, quite possible. Well, after that, they have the Colts, Rams, Panthers, and 49ers to face. So winning one of them may still be needed if the Seahawks are to secure postseason football. Jackson Smith-Njigba had the expected big game against the Titans and is now on course to record the first ever 2,000 receiving yard season in the NFL. So, got to mention that when that's a possibility. Finally, for the good week teams, the Atlanta Falcons. The win over the Saints and the Bucks lost in week 12, plus the injury to Baker Mayfield, although that doesn't appear as serious as first thought, has brought the Falcons right back into the NFC South picture. This is their only path to the postseason, though, and if they can catch the Bucks, they are. And even if, even if they can catch the Bucks, they've already lost twice to the Panthers, so essentially trail them by 2.5 games in the divisional title race for tiebreak reasons. Kirk Cousins will need to lead them down that path in the absence of Michael Penix, and they will need to get Drake London back too to assist them to make up the lost ground. Games at the Jets and Bucks, either side of hosting the Seahawks, look like 2 must-win games for the Falcons, and they pretty much have to win out from here if they are to find a path to the postseason. But it was a good week this week. A neutral week. Never used that term in this before, but there is somebody who I think had a neutral week. The Denver Broncos saw the Chiefs pull half a game closer to them whilst they were on bye, but the Chiefs did so by beating the Colts, which moves Denver into a clear second seed spot from the AFC as a result. So, yeah, the Chiefs might have got a little bit closer in the divisional battle that they probably can't win. The Chiefs, that is. But they've helped the Denver out in terms of seeding. So neutral week for them, yin and yang. Bad week. Let's get on to that. Buffalo Bills. After winning their first 4 games, the Bills have gone loss, loss, win, win, loss, win, loss, and in doing so, have been consistent in their inconsistency. Offensively, they put far too much emphasis on Josh Allen to win games for them, and they made the same mistake when losing to the Texans in Week 12. James Cook is really good, but surely deserves more than 20 carries a game, something that has happened 3 times this season. And guess what? The Bills won all 3 of those games. And the run is the big issue on the defensive side too. Pretty much every week, opposing running backs enjoy themselves against the Bills. And after this loss, the Bills have fallen into the maelstrom of the AFC wildcard race and allowed the Patriots to establish a growing gap at the top of the AFC East. Unless the Bills bring more balance to their offense, they may even miss out on the postseason, and the defensive run issues may not be fixable this season. Right, Pittsburgh Steelers. Mason Rudolph played reasonably well in the absence of Aaron Rodgers, but ultimately could not get them over the line against the Bears. And now the Steelers not only lose top spot in the AFC South, but also fall out of the wildcard places in the AFC. They still get 2 shots at the Ravens in the last third of the season, but may need to win both of those games if they have to win their division now. If they do not do that, then they need to go in 4-2 to possibly get a wildcard berth to the postseason. So with games against wildcard rivals the Bills in Week 13 and then the first meeting against the Ravens, the Steelers surely need to win one of those if they are to go beyond Week 18. So to be in that position from where they were, not a good week for the Steelers. Carolina Panthers. Well, they didn't enjoy themselves in Week 13 as they lost to the 49ers. And that loss had all the hallmarks of a young offensive unit still trying to figure out how to deliver on a consistent basis. And this loss may be terminal for their NFC wildcard hopes, as the rest of the contenders for those spots all won in Week 13. So now the route to the postseason for the Panthers is, like the Falcons, is by winning the NFC South, where they trail the Bucks by half a game and have 2 games left to play against Tampa. I should correct how far Atlanta are behind Carolina from earlier, because obviously I wrote that before the Panthers game this week. So they're slightly closer. Anyway, you know where I'm going. Um, so, like I said, the Panthers' route to the postseason is by winning the NFC South. They trail the Bucks by half a game, but they do have 2 games left to play against Tampa. They may need to win both of those games though to get ahead of the Bucks. Moving on to the Bucks, they had a bad week as they got absolutely taken apart by the Rams in Week 12, almost literally in Baker Mayfield's case. If the Bucks were not in the NFC South, they would be outside of the playoff spots in the NFC right now. But they are in the NFC South, and winning that division has to be their focus now. Initial news on Baker and Mayfield's shoulder injury sounds hopeful that he will not be out for too long, if may even play this week. And the 2 games with the Panthers in the last 3 weeks of the season and the Week 15 meeting with the Falcons are 3 games the Bucks will look to win to wrap up this division and get them to the postseason. Their other 3 games against the Cardinals, Saints, and Dolphins with just 9 wins between them this season. So there's no need to panic yet for Tampa, but a Week 13 win over the Cardinals would certainly calm their nerves a little. It was a bad week for the Indianapolis Colts. The game in Arrowhead would not have been one that the Colts were most hopeful of winning prior to the start of the season. So losing it in itself should not be seen as bad. But the result is that their once clear lead in the AFC South is now down to a single game over the Jags and 2 games over the resurgent Texans. Now, as I said, in regard to perception regarding the result from a Chiefs point of view, how this is perceived is key for the Colts too. If you had told the Colts they would be leading the AFC South and probably need 2 more wins to secure postseason football after Week 12 before the season started, they would have been more than happy to take that outcome. But if you look at it as we have lost 2 of our last 3 and backing up to the field, then you would be very worried about the future. And how they approach their 4 remaining games with the Texans and Jags will tell us a lot about the Colts' mentality and mental toughness. They have played so well this season, they deserve to win the AFC South and make the postseason. But are they as strong mentally as they have been physically? That's the question they've now got to answer. It was a bad week for the Cincinnati Bengals. Another loss for the Bengals pretty much eliminates them from the AFC wildcard race. But if they win 6 in a row to close out the season, Joe Barrows on his way back, that would include 2 wins over the Ravens and give them a chance in the AFC North. So that slight chink of light is still there, but even that would be snuffed out if they lost in Baltimore in Week 13. The Minnesota Vikings, the loss to the Packers, pretty much puts the final nail in the coffin of the Vikings 2025 season. But the bigger worry forward could be at quarterback, both in terms of his going in the concussion protocol and his play. JJ McCarthy had another poor game against the good defense here. Until he shows he can deliver against the better defenses in this league, his tenure as the Vikings starting quarterback has to be in doubt. Arizona Cardinals, yet another narrow loss for the Cardinals, this time in overtime to the Jags, makes this the last week the Cardinals will appear in either good news or bad news. From next week they will be, and in other news, as their slim chances of making the postseason disappeared with this loss. Given how competitive they have been in games this season, it may not take much to turn this around next season though. For the LA Chargers, who are on bye, they saw wins for the Ravens, Jags, Chiefs, and Texans, and losses for the Bills and Steelers, which has made the race for the AFC wildcard spots condense even further. So, on balance, this was a bad bye week for them. And those 6 results also did the Miami Dolphins few favours as they seek to play catch up in the AFC wildcard race following their bye. They now lie 2 games behind the 10th place team. So set your ringtone to the theme from Mission Impossible, Dolphins fans. The Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles lost to the Cowboys holds greater strategical significance than actual significance, as they still remain in control of the NFC East and pretty much assured of postseason football. Strategically, it leaves them behind the Rams in the race for the NFC top seeding, bye week and home field advantage. It also shows how the offense continues to struggle, which could come back to haunt them the rest of this regular season and into the postseason. And moving on to Andy and other news. The Cleveland Browns beat the Las Vegas Raiders in Shedeur Sanders' first start, but Sanders isn't the story here, much as everybody will want to talk about him. Myles Garrett and his incredible pursuit of breaking the NFC single-season sack record is. He had a 3 against this dire Raiders O-line, and one per game from here would get him that record now. So a bit like Jackson Smith and Jigba, Garrett's the story for Cleveland. The Washington Commanders watched all the teams they were just about in sight of in the NFC wildcard race disappear over the horizon whilst they were on by. Time to plan for 2026 is here and now. Um, Jameis Winston basically lobbed it up and hoped for the best, and it nearly worked against the Lions, but ended another loss as the New York Giants continued to entertain but lose. The New York Jets battled hard on defense, but still had little or no offense and lost again as a result. The New Orleans Saints lost again, this time to the Falcons, and will need to completely revamp their offense for next season to avoid a similar fate in 2026. And finally, the Tennessee Titans, and that's becoming a common saying. And finally, the Tennessee Titans. They just about stayed in contention through the game with the Seahawks, but ultimately lost to remain in possession of the first overall pick for the 2026 draft. And that wraps up this week's edition of Good Week, Bad Week. I'll be back very soon with the look at my updated power rankings, who's in contention in it for MVP, season-long MVP, and Offensive Rookie of the Year. So look out for that one soon. See you in a bit.